Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good day. Browns back on the practice field, getting ready to wrap up the regular season against the Bengals in Cincinnati Sunday at 1 o'clock. A game doesn't have any bearings for either team. Bengals already eliminated from the playoffs. Browns already in and in the 5th seed in the AFC. So not practicing today for the Browns. Amari Cooper, who did talk to the media, said he's feeling better. Should be good to go by the time the playoffs hit around. Ethan Posick not going. Joel Bitonio not going. Greg Newsome not going. Shelby Harris, Duron Harmon, Anthony Walker, Dustin Hopkins, Mike Ford, and Jordan Kanasic all not practicing today for the Browns. Let's welcome in Quincy Carrier, Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, again, there's no need for any of these guys to go out and play against the Bengals in a game that there isn't a whole lot on the line for. But why 12 wins? Why is that important for Browns fans and the Browns?
Well, if you get 12 wins, it'll be the second time in the NFL that the Cleveland Browns have reached that mark. They reached it 3 other times, but they were in the AAFC. That was in like the 1940s to 50s when they did that. So it would mark kind of new ground for the Cleveland Browns, right? It would mark new territory for this franchise. And one of the things we have to remember, because we're all frustrated with the perception of the Cleveland Browns, well, things like winning 12 games goes a long way in changing that perception of the Cleveland Browns that got built up mainly between 2003 to 2017. So, you know, look, it's not worth losing a big-time player over, I wouldn't say. But if you do get that 12th win, it does mean something, especially to the fan base, because it just is another thing that you can look at and go, okay, I think we're going to be fine, right? Like I think the team is in better hands now. You know, it just gives you that security. Kevin has a 12-win season. He wins Coach of the Year. You also don't have to worry about impatient owners trying to fire a guy because that becomes much less likely. It's just kind of a quality of life win. Like, you know, you might just live a little easier, or if you get a bumpy road, it's like an insurance win.
You know, you and I have talked for a long time about building a culture. Is it safe to say that they kind of have the culture now, given what they've gone through, or is it even too early to say that?
You can tell. I mean, like you felt it when they beat the 49ers, right? And they had to overcome some adversity. And it's one thing to do that once, but you also did it against the Baltimore Ravens. You also did it, you know, when people started to count you out towards the end of this season. And not only did you do it, you took care of business. I think this is just who this team is at this point. They are a good football team, right? And I think a lot of the anxiety people have about, like, hey, do we bench these guys? Do we kill our momentum? Is kind of based on this idea that we think what's happening right now is kind of a fluke. But I don't think it is a fluke. You know, Joe Flacco probably playing well because he's in an offense that fits him. He probably will continue to play relatively well. And if he doesn't, this defense has been good all year. We know that's not a fluke, and that's going to be what's going to be able to carry the team. So, yeah, it's a different feeling, ain't it? Like, because every other time we've gotten here, there's been that sense of, oh, clock's going to hit midnight on Cinderella. But this team don't feel like Cinderella at all. Like, you watch them play football, and you're like, this is not a lucky team. This is a scary team, right? I think the Bills and the Ravens, you watch them play football, and you're like, oh, I want to avoid them.
Yeah, and, you know, Rich Eisen, guy from the NFL Network, also has the Rich Eisen Show, talking about, are the Browns real playoff threats?
Cleveland has full-on belief and hope, and it is well-founded, for real. Because you've got a coach of the year already, could be 2-time coach of the year, depending on how everything breaks for Kevin Stefanski, because there's a lot of other terrific candidates. One at Baltimore, clearly. One that could be in Houston, one that you could absolutely make a case for in Detroit, to name a few. But this defense and that offense with this guy who's playing like the Super Bowl MVP he was and may be again, this is real, man. And good thing he didn't mess up in high school. Let's just put it that way. QB1 in high school. But I remember Flacco, like, where is he? He's just like, hey, I'm making jokes.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Winning games, 300 yards before halftime. Look at me, taking naps. Winning games for the Cleveland Browns. Look out, AFC South winner. He's coming your way.
Talking about Joe Flacco, Browns get the winner of the AFC South first round of the playoffs. The national media has been won over with Joe Flacco. You are finding very few people who are saying this is a mirage.
Yeah, and I think what's one of the things that's important, right, is what can happen to a guy who was a starter for a very long time, a former first-round pick, and then kind of has to do the journeyman thing, is that they lose that confidence. They don't feel like they're the man anymore, right? Like their whole life, they've been the man, and now they are not, right? And that kind of happened to Joe Flacco, I think, when Lamar Jackson took over, and they just never looked back at him, right? And that probably shook his confidence a little bit. He never felt like the man. But in Cleveland, you know, people were looking at him not as Joe Flacco that's been bouncing around the league, but they're like, hey, that's the dude who won Super Bowl MVP, right? Like maybe he could be that here. And then we just kind of, he feels like in his mind, he's the man again, right? And that does a lot for a player's confidence. And you see him playing like he the man. Like he out here running, throwing on the run, throwing in the tight windows. That's not something he had the confidence to do with the conviction that he has a couple of years ago. And I think just that feeling, right? Just feeling like you're in charge. It's my job right now. They believe in me. They see Joe Flacco, not the guy that's been bouncing around in the league. When I walk through that door, that means something, right? And it really does help him play at a higher level. And of course, the fit being pretty ideal for him is great as well.
So the Browns had 5 players that were selected to the Pro Bowl. This tweet from the Browns. Joel Bitonio, who they drafted. Myles Garrett, who they drafted. Denzel Ward, who they drafted. Amari Cooper, who they traded for. And David Njoku, who they drafted. First Pro Bowl selection for David Njoku. He talked about that honor.
Feels pretty good. Hopefully first of many, but honestly, the best feeling is just being what I can be for this team, you know. It's crazy saying that, you know, just thinking of the past and how everything went the past few years, but there's nowhere else I'd rather be.
What was it like the other night, just being able to celebrate with the fans?
Fucking hey, it was a fun night, huh? I'm telling you, yeah. Watching it and doing it were two different things. Like doing it, I was like, whatever, you know, was having a good time. Then watching it, I was like, oh shit. Like I did some wild stuff, but it was awesome. Great feeling.
Music kids night though.
Yeah, I know.
My mate is.
It's dope, and it's honestly vice versa. You know, when I started screaming, he started screaming, so we both like fed with energy.
You know, Quincy, it's been interesting to watch him become everything a lot of people thought he could be with Joe Flacco as the quarterback.
Yeah, and look, he was showing signs of this even earlier in the season of being able to live up to the expectations of being David Njoku. He's really been a pivotal part of this offense and just getting, you know, when you talk about getting 4 quarterbacks through and having a winning season, he was a huge part of that. Him and Amari Cooper stepped up big this year. And now he's starting to get some of those big games with Joe Flacco as well. So, yeah, David just – he put his head down. Like the David Njoku that walked in here in 2018 could not be more different than the David Njoku that stands in his locker room. And that's just development, right? Like that's development that is being patient with the player. Like I know people get mad when online we decide a player needs to go, right? Like Anthony Schwartz or something like that. And we're like, why is he being so stubborn? Why are they hanging on to them? Because they really do believe in the people they have in the building. And when you believe in the people you have in the building and you're right, you get guys like David Njoku, who in past Browns regimes would have been somebody we would have been furious about not being on the Browns anymore and seeing him reach this potential somewhere else, right? Like so many guys could have slipped through the cracks, but whether the Browns current regime drafted these guys or not, they stuck with them and they nurtured these guys. David Njoku is one of the best pass blocking and run blocking tight ends in all of football, as well as a dynamic play. Like, he turned into George Kittle. Like, did you expect that to happen in 2018 or 2019 or 2020 or even 2021, that he would become that kind of player? That's who he's become. And that's just great development, great patience, and a lot of hard work for David Njoku as well. Taking advantage of the opportunities that's in front of him. And, it's just a perfect mix. And again, Cleveland's one of those places where you could develop a talent.
Yeah, 20 years old when they drafted him. So it took him maybe a year longer, but it was because he was kind of raw and young. All right, so in addition to those 5 Pro Bowl selections, 4 of which were draft picks, 6 alternates. Corey Bojorquez, a free agent. Grant Delpit, a draftee. Dustin Hopkins, a trade acquisition. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, drafted. Ethan Posick, a free agent. Wyatt Teller, a trade acquisition. So you got 6 alternates. 2 of them were draftees, 2 of them trade acquisitions, 2 of them free agents. You're getting talent every way you can.
And 5 of them were acquired by Andrew Berry, which is interesting to know. And you can look at this list, I think with Amari Cooper, that makes 6. Myles Garrett was not acquired by Andrew Berry. But yeah, it's just good GM work by the Cleveland Browns. It's good leg work there. I mean, the Corey Bojorquez signing was something that was underrated. I know a lot of people wanted him cut earlier in the season because they felt like he was the reason that Cade York wasn't making kicks. Imagine how we would have felt if we would have made that determination, Dave. If we would have got rid of Corey, saw him punting well somewhere else, holding kicks well somewhere else, and we had Cade York. Like, imagine how we would feel right now. There's an alternate universe where the team makes that decision. Right, that's not an easy decision to make. So they stuck with Corey. They made the change at kicker, got a veteran, and ended up being a good trade, even though people were kind of poo-pooing it at the time. And then Grant Delpit's another guy that they stuck with. They figured out a role that works with him, and now he's shining. JOK is a guy that they had a plan for, right? Like, you talk about patience. They had so much patience with JOK because everybody who ever evaluated JOK in college could so easily get carried away with all the things he could possibly do. But the Browns were strict. They were like, we're going to teach him how to play this position first. And when he's ready in a couple of years, we will move him to Mike. But only when he's ready. And they exhibited that patience, and now they're benefiting from it.
So it is the 6th Pro Bowl that Joel Bitonio has been selected to. Only Hall of Famers Joe Thomas, Jim Brown, and Lou Groza have been selected to more Pro Bowls than Joel Bitonio. And Joel Bitonio and Myles Garrett, both guys that are probably on the cusp of becoming Hall of Famers in their own. I think Myles Garrett's probably there. And I think Joel Bitonio, it's harder to gauge with offensive linemen, especially guards, just because it's, there aren't many run blocking metrics, but you get into those 6, 7, 8 Pro Bowls, and especially when they're consecutive. Joel Bitonio is probably a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. I don't know how they put guards in, right? Because that's not one that comes up often is guards. Like, they don't usually headline a class or have them in there. So it's interesting how they're going to handle that position, because I find it hard to believe it's not a Hall of Fame worthy position. Like, this ain't like placeholder or something like that.
Right.
Like, this is a real football position. Like, you should probably have a bunch of guards in there, but you just don't see them go in, especially like guards that we've seen play. I don't know when the last time a guard that we watched went into the Hall of Fame.
Well, there was a guy named Gene Hickerson that blocked for Leroy Kelly in the 70s and 60s, and Paul Brown. So that's probably the last Browns guard. But again, I would imagine you're going to start seeing Joe Thomas was there. It'll be Bitonio, Myles Garrett. There'll be a steady influx of guys every couple years that go in for the Browns now, I believe.
Yeah, I remember when Jameer Miller was the only Pro Bowler on this team for the longest time. Remember that? Before Joe Thomas we had one Pro Bowler. One. And then he tore his Achilles or something like the next season on the first play. Man, look, we done watched some stuff.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out on the side of the break. We head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We'll hear what Pete Prisco from CBS thinks about the job Kevin Stefanski has done. Sports for CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Ooh, holiday gold! The $20 scratch off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million.
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, it's Mike from Utah. Can we tap the brakes a little bit on the Joe Flacco love fest? You can pretty much guarantee his line's going to turn out to be 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 turnovers. And those 2 interceptions don't win you Super Bowls. And we're looking at a team right now that leads the league in giving the ball up. So I'd like to know what you think the solution might be.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, that's a fair concern about Flacco. I will say, for his career, he throws an interception every 42 passes. In the playoffs, it's every 44 passes. And in the playoffs, he's thrown 25 touchdowns and 10 picks. Of those 10 picks, 6 of them were the first 2 years he made it, and he made it like 6 years after it. So he's gotten better. I think he's going to take a little bit more care of the football. I could be wrong. Running the football is a cure for everything.
Look, I think the caller here, though, is having a great miss of context. Like, hey, if this were Deshaun Watson throwing 2 turnovers and we think he's supposed to be the franchise quarterback and he's getting paid to be that, okay, we could talk about them interceptions, right? Like, we need to talk about that. That's serious. This Joe Flacco, he wasn't in the NFL in October. Like, it's bonus points at this point. And the fact that you can get 300 yards, 400 yards out your offense, if you have to eat a couple interceptions in order to do that, that's literally best case scenario for you. Like, I don't know, like, what's the better solution there? Do you want to put Kyle Trask in or dig up PJ Walker off the bench? Like, at some point, we got to just accept that it's not a starter in there. It's ultimately a backup. He's playing really well, but it's a backup. And I think talking about the interception, especially when like the last few games, it hasn't been that big of a problem, is kind of nitpicky in my opinion. Like, is somebody who was skeptical of the whole Joe Flacco thing to begin with, you're at the point to where he has greatly exceeded any expectations of him coming into this. So, you know, I think these are concerns that we would have if we thought Joe Flacco was going to be the franchise quarterback. But we just need Joe Flacco to hold it together for like 4 more weeks.
Yeah, the other thing is, you kind of touched on it. They haven't been in the playoffs. You can't do the pick sixes. You can't give them, 30-yard fields with this defense. If you turn it over in your end, your half of the field, and make it a 60, 65-yard field, that's fine. Again, I'll say it again. I don't see a team driving 70 yards on this defense more than twice in a game. I just don't see it.
Yeah, and I think, again, one of the things I point to, like, he had that one weird pick six on that screenplay where he just didn't let it die for whatever reason.
Yep.
But outside of that, like, even the couple interceptions he threw, like, really the 2 interceptions he threw in, what was it, the Jacksonville game were kind of just of circumstance. No, the Texans game were just kind of circumstantial interceptions because you didn't have a kicker. And then he threw the 1 interception in the Jets game. Like, I really think if you're paying attention to the context of these interceptions the last few weeks, you would be much less concerned about it. And, you look at the raw number on the paper, it does look a little bit concerning. But again, 1, we're talking about being down to your 4th option at quarterback, and 2, that 4th option producing at a very high level that you did not expect. So if you have to take a trade-off, that's just worth it, because I mean, we're back to having real expectations for this team, which when Deshaun Watson went down, that was not something that we thought we would have.
Fair enough. All right, Pete Prisco, CBS Sports, on Kevin Stefanski and the Browns.
In my mind, he's the coach of the year. Yeah, you have 29% of your salary cap on IR. You're down to your fourth string quarterback who you brought in November.
Right.
Your star running back not there. You're down your three top tackles, and yet they're still moving the football and playing good offensive football. That's a tribute to Kevin Stefanski. We know the defense was going to be better. I think Jim Schwartz coming in really helped the defense.
Yeah.
But what Kevin Stefanski has done with the offense, and Joe Flacco looks fantastic. He's moving.
They're going wacko for Flacco in
It's
Cleveland.
unreal, and they should be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. I give a lot of the credit to Kevin Stefanski, and he will get my vote for Coach of the Year.
Let's go a step further, too. You talk about different quarterbacks. He's the fourth, obviously, as we talked about, and obviously joined the team as the season already took place. But think about the different style of quarterback he is. When you've got DTR, who had his own separate package, P.J. Walker, what he feels comfortable with, or even Deshaun Watson when he's in there. For those guys who have better athleticism than he does, it's going to be a different offense, different system, different game plan. Then Flacco comes in as more of your traditional pocket passer. And yes, we've seen him move decently well within the system, but not to the likes of what some of these other guys could do. So even the adjustment quarterback to quarterback in game planning and the success that they're having, and you look at Flacco so far, and I thought when he would just go in and manage games, he's winning it with his arm right now, and it's not the running game. Yes, the defense has been a part of it too, but it's Flacco playing outstanding.
Yeah, I don't often find myself agreeing with Brady Quinn, but I do in that instance. Who do you think needs to step up for the Browns in the playoffs?
I think you do need Jerome Ford. You need something from this run game in the playoffs, right? Because teams are going to start just saying, all right, we're going to sell out for the pass. We're just not going to bite on any of these fakes, and you need the Browns to be able to make them pay. I think in the Texans game, actually, you saw this in effect where the Browns just got 3 good runs in that game, right? They got 3 good runs by Jerome Ford. They bring in Nick Harris, and all of a sudden, the Texans have to defend the run. They're worried about the run. They see the Nick Harris package. That allows you to get a nice one-on-one with Amari Cooper, and then you get to throw that thing over top to Amari Cooper, and then boom. Amari Cooper has a 200-something yard game because you were able to move the ball a little bit running the ball because it changed how they could cover you. So, yeah, if you want to make David Njoku's life easier, if you want to make Joe Flacco's life easier, if you want to see the turnover thing dialed down, a good run game is going to be important to that. And I don't think it's just Jerome Ford. To be honest, I think the more critical parts are just getting those interior 3 guys, Joe Bitonio, Ethan Posick, and Wyatt Teller on rhythm more in that run game because they just seem out of sync at times. They seem real streaky with when they find that rhythm in the run block game. And if they can find that consistently, that adds another layer to this offense. And now we're really going to be able to play true Cleveland Browns, suffocate them out with the defense, and then smother them with the offense football that can win you a championship.
All right, so you mentioned the Browns defense. These are the NFL leaders in havoc, which is the percentage of plays that a defense registers a pressure, pass breakup, interception, forced fumble, or a tackle for loss or no gain. Browns lead the league in that at 58%. And look at all of these teams that are top 5. Browns at 58, San Francisco 55, Buffalo 53, Dallas 53, Buffalo 52. I said Buffalo was Baltimore 53. Those are the teams that are considered top 5 in the NFL. So that is a metric that tells you these are teams to watch out for.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you can get pressure with your defensive line, that's the great equalizer, right? Every quarterback struggles against pressure. Not blitzes, right? Some quarterbacks are great against the blitz, but if you can get good, clean pressures, 4 or 5 guys, and still have all those bodies in coverage, hey, man, you got Peyton Manning back there. He's not going to know what to do. That's just one of the great equalizers in this sport. That's why they let offensive linemen hold on miles all the live long day because they know if they don't, nobody's going to get anything off. So, yeah, that's one of the most important things you can get as a team. You look at teams with strong defensive lines, and those were the teams that were able to upset Brady in the Super Bowl. Those were the teams that were able to win without franchise quarterbacks. Those are the teams that were able to make what seems unlikely likely, and because a great defensive line that gets pressure at a high rate like the Cleveland Browns have right now is the great equalizer, especially in the playoffs.
Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage, and I can step aside, take a quick time out. We head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, plus strengths and weaknesses for Super Bowl contenders. Browns are one of them. Sports for CLE, be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hello, this is a lifelong Browns fan from Cambridge, Ohio. Go Browns, I love you guys. Jimmy, Dee Haslam, they deserve a lot of credit. They were a bad owner, but they learned over time how to be a great owner. They're staying out of the business. Go Browns. Super Bowl Browns, I guarantee.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, I get why fans are frustrated or were frustrated with Jimmy Haslam. There were some things in the beginning that were kind of questionable, but there is a metric which we've talked about. They are spending in the neighborhood of $80 to $90 million a year, real dollars, more than the next closest. That's how badly this guy wants to win.
And he's willing to make that investment while also putting his ego aside enough to let people who are good at making these football decisions make these football decisions, which, hey, look, it seems like something that would be easy to do, right? But you look at NFL owners, definitely not something that's easy for them to do for whatever reason, right? So, yeah, he does deserve some, well, they do deserve credit, him and Dee Haslam, being able to, one, invest in the team heavily while also, you know, being able to set their ego aside enough to allow Dee Podesta and Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski to run the operation with some level of autonomy that's allowed them to get to this point. So it's been a nice pairing. And look, the best owners are the ones that are smart enough to know that they're not the ones who should be making all the decisions. And I think that Jimmy, through some bad decisions, has finally learned that and has come out the other side, you know, with a better franchise because of it.
Yeah, and again, I think he finally likes what he has. We'll find out. I would expect sometime after the playoffs we get an extension for both the general manager and the head coach. I think he likes that pairing that he has finally. All right, this from the Bleacher Report. Strengths and weaknesses for 9 Super Bowl contenders. They consider the Browns one of them. Why they'll win it all for the Browns. Defense. Browns lead the league in yards allowed per game, passing yards per game. Rank 11th in scoring defense, have logged the 3rd most takeaways in the league, and have a Defensive Player of the Year candidate in edge rusher Myles Garrett. Why they'll fall short. Run game has been inconsistent since Chubb went down, which was the first half of the second game. Flacco's racking up passing yards, and he's also piling up interceptions. No team in the league has more giveaways than Cleveland's 35. Well, those giveaways are also why the defense is 11th in scoring defense, though, because they've had a lot of short fields. I can't argue with any of those. The run game, if Posick and Teller and Bitonio can stay healthy, I think the run game gets back on track. I think you saw a little bit of that against the Jets. Remember, each of those guys was banged up at various times during the year. I know everybody is, but when both of your starting tackles are out and everybody's banged up on the interior, it is a challenge.
Oh, it most certainly is, you know, and especially when you have guys just going in and out, in and out, in and out all every week, all week. It's tough to build up that chemistry. It's tough to build up that timing. It's tough to get that rhythm down. So hopefully not only do you get healthy, but you get some time to get on the same page with guys like Arion Christian and James Hudson and be able to figure out how to just hit the rhythm you're supposed to hit on these run blocking plays, because they're there a lot of the times. You know, the scheme's good, the play calling's good. Just got to be on time with a lot of it. And it's not just the run plays, right? It's the screens also where they're just a little bit out of sync. They get that thing going. That'll be a big thing that they can add into their arsenal.
All right, Kimberly Martin, ESPN's Get Up crew, on the Browns and the upcoming playoffs.
Are they the most dangerous team right now to Baltimore in the entire AFC?
They are.
They are?
They are, yeah. And I can tell you that because I've watched them literally every single week of my life. No, they are, because that defense is legit, and I think people always want to discount Cleveland, but
you played with Flacco in Baltimore. I mean, is this real? Yeah. Is what's happening here real? Joe Flacco off the couch, completely out of retirement, and all of a sudden, literally looking like an elite quarterback?
The last a great quarterback loses that arm strength, and he has the confidence, and he's been there, seen it all. Just think he went against Pittsburgh, he went against Baltimore in practice every day, and he can go on these runs where he don't turn the football over. And if he does that, they're going to be the scariest team. It could be a legitimate threat for the Super Bowl.
He did it once before. It was unlikely then. What he's doing now is practically impossible.
Look at this. Look at the love for Flacco.
They love
this.
That was Bart Scott, a linebacker who played a year with the Ravens, Joe Flacco's rookie year, also played against him for a number of years. But he brought up an interesting point. That year he was Super Bowl MVP, he threw 11 touchdowns, no picks in the playoffs. And he can get hot like that.
Yeah, he can get hot, and you worry. The one thing you do worry where like age does factor in, like any pocket passer, once the age goes up, the interceptions do go up, right? But I don't think his interceptions have been really age related when I watch him on tape. It's really just he just didn't understand who he was throwing the ball to, or he trusted somebody to finish a route that he probably shouldn't have trusted to finish a route. I think it was more just not being ultra familiar with your personnel. And I think as the weeks have gone on, he has not made those same mistakes because he's just a lot more familiar with the guys that he has on the roster. And look, he's probably going to turn the ball over in the playoffs. I don't expect him to be perfect, but the Browns don't need him to be perfect, right? We can live with one turnover or something like that a game. We just don't want it to be 3 turnovers, right? Like that's where it starts to break the bracket, the defense. So again, they don't need Joe Flacco to be perfect. They don't need him to replicate the numbers that he did in 2013, because if we remember correctly, 2013, that wasn't the Ravens defense that we all remember. Like we were talking about like Danielle Ellerbe and everything else like that on that defense. It wasn't a defense that was truly like those old Ravens defenses and carried them. They really needed the offense to carry them in that playoff run. But this is a little bit of a different story, right? He's not going to be asked to carry the show like he was in 2013 just to make sure that the music keeps playing, right? Make some drives, score, take care of the football. If you turn it over once, it's not that big of a deal. So you can still try to make plays downfield. Just don't make a habit of turning the ball over. And the last few weeks has indicated to me, and the point differential has indicated to me that that's a track that he's on to right now.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk more about the Browns getting ready for the playoffs. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Mike Florio, Chris Sims from Pro Football Talk on where they rank the Browns heading into Week 18, the final one of the regular season.
The Browns are, drumroll please, they're at number 6. Should they be higher than number 6?
I think they should be. I think they should.
Where? Who would you put them in front of?
I'd put them at number 4 right now. That's where I'd put them. I think they're worthy of that. I think they have one of the most elite units in all of football with their defense and what they do there. And then, of course, we know their offense ain't bad either. There's some weapons there, right? So, that to me is they're the team to watch out that could maybe upset our 49ers-Ravens Super Bowl matchup that I think we all think is going to come. The Bills are.
But there's no orange in the logo. There's no orange in the logo.
Right,
it can't happen.
Right. They'll have to rip up the script and write something new, right? But I think they'll like that Hollywood ending with Joe Flacco coming to town. But, yeah, they're the ones I look at. Now, you know what my thought is with the Browns. I wish they'd, as much as we're going to give Stefanski Coach of the Year, right, and I don't know how much he has to listen to the analytics department. I've heard times that the analytics department, they help manage the football game in there in Cleveland. I don't know that for sure, but I wonder that. And you know my thoughts there. They're a little just too aggressive and loose across the board. But damn, they're such a fun team to watch, and they are in your face, so aggressive. And that defense, like I've said to you for the last 8 or 9 weeks, they give me 2015 Broncos vibes in a big way. And then, of course, Flacco, old quarterback, like Peyton Manning, all of that. That's where I look at Cleveland and say, watch out. You better stop disrespecting them. I'm going to get your family from Cleveland on your ass on a daily basis until you start giving them respect.
And, Quincy, when you look at it, Sims brings up an interesting point. An elite unit is what gets you to the Super Bowl. If you do something better than anybody else, and right now that Browns defense, you could make the case it's either the Browns or the Ravens are the best defense. And you can go back and forth with that.
I mean, one team did win in Baltimore when both teams had their starting quarterbacks. Now, I would point that one out there. One team's defense didn't make the definitive play in that game against the MVP and the number 1 seed in the NFL on the road. I kind of feel like, Dave, did we feel like walking out of that game? We better than Baltimore. I don't know. But I think the Browns clearly have the best defense in the NFL. Like, I think the other defenses in the NFL, they're good defenses, but they're good regular NFL defenses. Like, they're good defenses for this year, but they're defenses that we have seen before. The Browns are doing stuff we have not seen in a very long time. They have a lot of since 1970, since like wherever the Cardinals were in the 50s, the Browns are doing this, right? Like the original LA Rams were the first team to do this. Like, we're seeing a ton of that. We're finding out a bunch of, like, if you are a Gen Z that watched the Browns this season, every time a graphic pops up, you learning something new about NFL history. You're like, oh man, the Cardinals used to be in Cleveland, like. That's how it's been. And that's the type of defense that they have. And when you have that kind of a defense, it's the great equalizer. And if you can get anything on offense, man, like you have a real shot.
So this just came across, Adam Schefter tweeting out that Dalvin Cook, the guy that's the running back that was released by the Jets, has in fact gone unclaimed on waivers, free to sign whichever playoff contender that he would like to. So let me ask you this, and again, who knows? Would you go out and sign Dalvin Cook?
Yes, because he had 1,100 yards last year. And I know that we're like conditioned to think running backs just fall off cliffs, but 12 months ago, he was capable of doing this. All we know about New York is that it's not a good place to work. They've done a terrible job managing that offense. They had Tim Boyle start games, which means I don't have any faith in the decision-making process in the New York Jets. And it's very obvious Dalvin Cook don't like working there. When those things are going against you, I think it's very easy to have a fall-off year and then go somewhere else and be fine. We've seen it with Randy Moss. We've seen it with Odell Beckham. We've seen it with a bunch of these guys. He did not magically lose all his athleticism like the Looney Tunes took his talent overnight. I think he's still a really good back. He was a good back 12 months ago. I don't see why that would change. And if you put him in a system that he has all the experience in the world in, he should probably be successful. And we should know this because we're doing the same thing with Joe Flacco, and we're asking him to go back from 10 years. We just asked him to go 12 months.
Yeah, and again, Kevin Stefanski, he was the offensive coordinator when Cook was tearing up things for the Vikings. So there is that. All right, before I let you go, take a look at this. These are players that have played all 16 games so far for the Browns. That is the entirety of the list. If you were playing basketball, it would be a nice nine-man rotation. Ford, Njoku, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Martin Emerson, Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, Myles Garrett, Jordan Elliott, and Wyatt Teller. Those are the only Browns who have played all 16 games so far. And a number of them have been beat up. Remember, Jerome Ford, it banged up. They didn't think he was going to be able to play. High ankle sprain, bad hand. David Njoku banged up. Wyatt Teller banged up a little bit. Zadarius
Njoku got third-degree burns.
Zadarius Smith, they have to pick up off the turf at least once a game. So these are guys.
That's a bad move by Zadarius. Zadarius is trying to get them shoulder pads off. Zadarius is trying to get home as fast as that. Every time he go down, he smile. You know he do it. He trying to get the pads off. He trying to get the tape off. He trying to see his family at the end of this, man. So I think that's just a vet move that Zadarius is doing out there. But yeah, man, it's been tough. It's been tough. A ton of injuries for this team. 9 guys is crazy.
Yeah.
But hey, those 9 guys been playing really good football, and when Myles Garrett is one of those guys,
yep,
you feel great.
The Magnificent 9 who have played all 16 games. All right, Quincy Carrier, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Great stuff. Thanks very much, Quincy.
Peace. Thank you.
All right, Quincy Carey, make sure you check him out. Really good Browns coverage, untitled and unfiltered. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, straight ahead. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Holiday gold! The $20 scratch-off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million.
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Colin Cowherd from The Herd with Colin Cowherd with his Herd hierarchy for Week 18 of the NFL.
Number 7. I wouldn't want to play the Cleveland Browns. First team to make the playoffs, starting 4 different quarterbacks. I'm just here to tell you that defense is physical. Joe Flacco has nothing to lose. No team will go into the playoffs more carefree on offense. What do they got to lose? Flacco doesn't care. Flacco's got the bag. Flacco's got the trophy. So they're going to come in loose, nothing to lose. They've been banged up at wide receiver. They get them back. I got Cleveland at 7.
Let's welcome in Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. Trevor, you hear all the national people kind of coming around and talking about where the Browns rank. How legitimate do you think they are in the playoffs?
Well, obviously, everything comes down to how your quarterback plays, but at least they have an experienced quarterback, right? I think there's a lot of quarterbacks once you get into this playoff tournament format, but kind of like Colin Cowherd was saying, Joe Flacco, he's been there. He's played around the NFL. He's got the trophy. And so he's right. Flacco's basically got nothing to lose at that point. And I don't say that meaning that, he's just going to throw these passes all willy-nilly. But when it comes to the pressure, especially playing in the first week of the playoffs, a lot of guys just play tight. And Flacco's not going to be one of those quarterbacks. So when you take that into account, and then you throw the defense behind him and how ferocious Cleveland's defense is playing, I agree completely with Colin. I don't have them number one on my power rankings, but it is a team that, I wouldn't want to face. No question about it.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, that defense, as long as the turnovers don't put that defense in a huge hole, they're not going to give up a whole lot of 70, 80-yard drive. They just haven't.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. So Pro Bowl alternate. Take a look at these numbers. 6th in run stops, 1st in run stop percentage, 1st in tackles for loss. That's among off-ball linebackers with at least 250 snaps this season. What have you thought about the way JOK has played and how he fits into what it looks like Jim Schwartz knows exactly how to unleash him, I guess.
Yeah. Well, he's one of those guys, like, you look at some of these hybrid players, Isaiah Simmons was one of them, right? He's this guy who's like, okay, well, is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? You draft him and you figure it out later. Well, unfortunately, the Cardinals realized that's not really how it goes. You have to be able to find a home for this player, and then his versatility is supposed to be a plus. It can't be, we'll just play him all over the field. It just doesn't work out like that. No one is that talented to be able to do those kinds of things. But for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, he was kind of this, all right, is he a safety? Is he a slot defender? Is he a linebacker coming into the NFL? Because he was a little bit smaller, but he had that hitting power. He had that speed. And so they have found a really great role for him as a linebacker. So he's got a home base, it feels like, at that linebacker spot. But the speed, the playmaking, and now most importantly, the freedom is there for him. That, when you get that base position down, then all of a sudden good defensive coordinators will say, okay, let's start expanding what you are able to do. Let's design the structure to give you a little bit more freedom. And I feel like this year, that is what they have done with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who, that tweet and a lot of people out there saying, hey, he's got a Pro Bowl season and all-pro season. He is definitely up there with one of the most impactful linebackers in the NFL. There's no doubt about it, because what they do, their team speed in the middle, he is a major part of what helps that defense be so dominant, as you mentioned.
You kind of alluded to it. So they basically played it exactly right with him. They gave him a role. When he mastered the role, they expanded it. That's kind of, I'm going to say it's good player development with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
And it's something that you would think is an obvious, right? When you draft a guy, you go, oh, okay, this is not. But it's so funny how defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators, more specifically, I think there's more customization on what you can do with these guys on the defensive side of the ball. But a lot of defensive coordinators say, hey, I've got my structure. I've got how I run the defense. And if you don't fit exactly what I'm doing, well, I'm just going to play you here anyways. And that's how you see a lot of these guys not even be able to play to their strengths. But that has not been the case, thankfully, with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. And now Browns fans are obviously happy. They're watching a very impactful player, but us around the nation as well, who don't maybe watch them every single week, we see the data points, we see the highlights, we see the impactful plays, and we just get to appreciate what he's been able to do on that defense.
So this is from CBSSports.com. Top, they call it retread head coaches. We'll say head coaches that have experience that are now in coordinator positions. Number 1 on the list is Brian Flores, defensive coordinator for the Vikings. Number 2 is Jim Schwartz. Third is Dan Quinn from the Cowboys. With Schwartz currently helping the Browns to an improbable postseason appearance by overseeing one of the NFL's stingiest defenses. Schwartz, hard-nosed approach, maybe old school, but he's got a resume to warrant another look up top. And you see, he was the Lions head coach 2009 and 2013, and under 500 as a head coach. What are your thoughts? I mean, he has changed the culture of this defense. He's not a hot young guy. How many looks do you think he gets as a head coach? I mean, what he's done with his defense, it's attention grabbing. Will he get a serious look as a head coach coming up?
That's the thing. I believe that he's going to get plenty of interviews because how that defense has been playing this year warrants those head coaching interviews. And I'm not saying that he's going to bomb those interviews or anything like that. He'll probably do well in those interviews, right? He's already been a head coach. He's got that experience. He's able to talk about, okay, what has he learned since the last time he's been a head coach over 10 years. And very clearly this year, he has a great understanding of where the league is, how to stop it. And any of these teams that are looking for more of, you mentioned it, and that article mentioned it, that kind of like old school approach and more defensive minded approach, they're going to seriously consider Jim Schwartz. But I don't know if there's a team that's going to allow him to be their head coach or hire him ultimately as their head coach, just because there are so many of those young guys. And I wonder if these owners, these general managers just get enamored with the guys who have not been there yet. These younger, but these guys who are, it's crazy, like late 30s. We're seeing a huge wave in these coordinators, defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators who are in their late 30s who become all the rage, and it's just the imagination of what could be with these guys because they've never put on the head coach headset before. And so if you want that experience profile, I think that certainly Flores on that list, Dan Quinn is somebody who I like a lot on that list as well. Jim Schwartz is right there. I just don't know if a team's actually going to do it. I think it depends on how many head coach vacancies there are. The more there are, the more that plays into his favor. He'll definitely get some interviews, but I'm not so sure how serious those are going to be if he's going up against the younger generation of coaches that are coming up, which is something that it's not his fault at all, but it's just kind of the reality of what we've seen from the latest head coaching cycles over the last couple of years.
So Schwartz was asked about potential head coaching openings earlier today.
Well, first of all, I'm really happy here. I talked about Kevin. I haven't really talked about Andrew Berry or the Haslams, but I love this organization. I love the city of Cleveland. That was such a great atmosphere. 31 years in the NFL. That was one of my top 5 atmospheres. That Thursday night. We needed to share that with the players. We got a lot of energy from them. We needed to give them a little energy, pay them back. Not many chances you have to be able to clinch at home. So. All that, but I'd say this: like in any job that you do, you always aspire to the top of that profession, and I'm no different there.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Trevor. If I think he will be very selective too. Once you've been a head coach, there are certain things you want to make sure you get, but if the right fit comes along, I think he could end up being a really good head coach in the NFL.
No, I agree with you. I think that, again, having that previous head coaching experience, having the last decade of learning kind of, all right, I'm reflecting on what worked, what didn't. And very clearly he has come in back to the fold as a guy who understands where the modern game is. It's not just like he's this old school head coach who's maybe set in his ways or has a throwback style. No, he's been around the block clearly, but that has yielded a great understanding of where the modern game is. We've seen that over the last couple of years with Raheem Morris as well, who was a head coach around the same time that Jim Schwartz was. He was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it didn't work out then. He's kind of been climbing the ladder ever since. And those are two guys with very similar timelines who might be in line to now get head coaching gigs. And so, yeah, he mentioned it. You aspire to be a head coach, the top of the food chain, if you will. But I also agree with you. I think that he's going to be decently selective because, man, over the last 10 years, not only has he grown himself, he's probably watched other situations where guys go into head coaching situations and it's not really the best. They're kind of set up to fail before it even begins. And clearly the way he talks about Cleveland, he's very happy where he's at. And if the situation's not right for him, I don't think he's just bolting for the door for the next head coach gig.
Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus, co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast, and I'm going to take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll look ahead to who the Browns might meet in the first round of the playoffs. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Holiday gold! The $20 scratch-off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million!
Game on the back.
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back. Game on the back.
We continue talking Browns with Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. Pete Prisco from CBS Sports on the Browns and the NFL rankings heading into this final week of the regular season.
So they're number 5 in Pete Prisco's power rankings,
Wait,
right behind them.
Can I just ask this, though, because we're going to go to the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Can I ask this, though? Why do you have them up so high? Is it the way Flacco's playing, or is it the whole entirety of the thing?
The whole entirety of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you believe in them then?
I do believe it. I believed in them from the beginning. I thought they'd be a playoff team, but with Deshaun Watson.
I mean, can they make noise in the playoffs?
Yes.
Okay.
They can.
All right. Maybe more so than the Miami Dolphins.
Naps in.
Miami Dolphins.
So they had Miami Dolphins 6. Trevor, let me ask you this. What are the keys to the Browns making some noise and not making an earlier playoff exit? In other words, what do they have to avoid to do to get knocked out first round? What do they need to do to get deeper into the playoffs?
Of course, I'm going to sound very cliche here, but this is the way that it is. The defense cannot really regress because you're only going up against really good offenses now that you get into this playoff format. It's not like you're playing terrible teams. And so, look, the defense has to stay stellar. And then, like we talked about at the top of the show, Flacco's got to take care of the football. He's got to be able to play carefree, but that cannot mean turnovers. And if that's the case, they have the defense. And I know you guys have been talking about this all year long. You've got the defense. If you just don't lose the turnover battle too badly, you can even lose the turnover battle by 1. You don't want to get carried away after that. But as long as you're not going off the deep end, 3 interceptions, 4 interceptions, a couple of fumbles, whatever it is, that defense is going to have you in games, whether it's home, whether it's away, no matter what the situation is. And so that's really the key for the Browns. It is just they have to be able to limit the turnovers, and the defense cannot have a bad outing because the teams they're going to go up against in this playoff format, they're just too good, especially in the AFC.
So we know that they will play the winner of the AFC South. So it's still 3 teams. It's the Jaguars, Texans, Colts. When you look at those, who do you think is the toughest matchup for the Browns of the 3 of them?
Man, that's an interesting question. I guess I would say that Houston's probably the toughest matchup because I think they have the best quarterback right now, right? Of course, C.J. Stroud, the way that he's been playing all season has been phenomenal. I mean, not only is he getting Rookie of the Year votes, but some people talked about him as MVP with this team. A lot of people said, okay, 4 or 5 wins this season maybe for the Houston Texans, and here they are last week of the year competing for a playoff spot and a division title. So that's incredible. But, when you look at C.J. Stroud, if you pressure him, which the Browns can certainly do as a very aggressive defense, the passing grade goes down a lot further. So Stroud has played well at times under pressure, but he is still a rookie, and this will still be his first time in the playoffs if he gets to this point. So I think that overall the potency of what we have seen from a C.J. Stroud, Bobby Slovic offense, and also what we have seen from a DeMeco Ryans defense with the Texans, they give the highest ceiling, if you ask me, realistic for where we are in the season. So I would say that they would be the toughest team for Cleveland if they end up getting that draw.
Now, if Jacksonville wins, they win the South. So let's talk a little bit about the Jaguars. Their quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, has practiced. He's trending to play, but that's a guy with head, shoulder, knees, and toe. He's got the AC shoulder. He had the calf, and he's just beat up at this point in time.
Yeah, and not only is he beat up, the team's just not playing well. When you look at the last 6 weeks that this team has played, 4 of their lowest graded games that they have played all season have come within those last 6 games. They're not trending in the right direction, Trevor Lawrence or not. I watched that Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus Jacksonville Jaguars game not too long ago, and I mean, that Jags team looked like a shell of themselves. They looked like they were just sleepwalking out there. And that's what worries me so much with this Jags team. It's not that they can't be good. They have good players. Trevor Lawrence is playing. He's a good quarterback. Love Travis Etienne as a dual threat kind of a player out of the backfield. Certainly an electric player when he has the ball in his hands as a runner. I think the wide receivers are fine enough. I think the defense can play well. But that's just the thing. They don't always. The Jags, to me, are the most high-variance team in the NFL. And when you get to the playoffs, that's just not good. That's not the tag that you want to have. So it's a team that can play good one week, but can also be catastrophic the next and look like they don't belong in a playoff format. So it's just such a Jekyll and Hyde with that team right now. I can tell you the things that they do well, but I can also tell you the things that they don't, and you just don't know which Jags team you're going to get. That's why I do have them behind the Texans as, what's the toughest potential matchup for Cleveland? I would say the Texans would be ahead of the Jaguars.
Last one that we'll talk about, the Colts. It's another team that could end up winning that division. Gardner Minshew has played pretty well. You know what? Jonathan Taylor's healthy now, and that's a whole different set of problems.
Yeah. No, I think the Colts are a really solid team, and I think their biggest asset is honestly their head coach, Shane Steichen. I just have loved what he has done this season, whether it's been with Gardner Minshew for most of the year or even what we saw from Anthony Richardson at the beginning of the year. Getting the most out of these guys' strengths, putting them in comfortable situations, right? We talked about this with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. It's the same way I feel on the offensive side of the ball with the Indianapolis Colts. And so maybe not an imposing offense overall with Gardner at quarterback, but the offensive line's playing well. They've got a diverse set of receivers to throw to. You mentioned Jonathan Taylor's back, and he is playing really well. On the defensive side of things, what worries me about the Colts is the youth and the inexperience of their secondary, particularly their cornerbacks. That is what worries me, because when you play in the playoffs, it's a different set of emotions, and those guys have struggled just from being rookie corners already, young corners, rookie corners already. And when you throw a playoff multiplier in there, that's something that concerns me, especially with a veteran quarterback like Flacco, who would not be afraid to take advantage of some of their hesitancy or mistakes. So that's the way that I view the Colts. Shane Steichen always intrigues me, but I don't know if that secondary is experienced enough to really make enough noise in the playoffs this year.
Well, we know for certain it'll either be the Jaguars, the Colts, or the Texans that the Browns will play in the first round of the playoffs. Trevor Sikkema, as always, great stuff. Thanks so much for your time and insight. Appreciate it, Trevor.
Appreciate it, guys. Anytime.
Trevor Sikkema, make sure you check him out. Pro Football Focus, also co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. Really good NFL stuff and Brown stuff as well. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.